Kansas is being criminally underrated, dare I say disrespected by the national media. We're going to break down why, what's going on, why it doesn't really matter on today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? I'm Derek Johnson, at D Johnson Radio on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thank you for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to all the everydayers. Catching each and every episode of the show, you the real MVP. And you can catch the show here anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the show. On today's edition, we're talking about KU basketball being disrespected, being underrated by the national media at this point. We're also going to break down floor versus ceiling outcomes for this Kansas team, and then a little 2K style ratings with the announcement of college basketball video game returning for what this Kansas roster would be. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Game Time. You'll be able to buy tickets to the KU basketball or football season upcoming. Once they go up there from Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Okay, so I think Kansas basketball is being pretty, slept on by the media right now. And I guess the follow-up to this is how much of this stuff actually matters, how much of the preseason polls and the expectation, right? It doesn't, to be clear. But still, I mean, it's something where it's like, I don't know, it bugs the fan. It's like, again, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And honestly, the fact that Kansas would be like underrated honestly can serve as motivation for the team. And they can play that underdog chip on their shoulder. Like if you're telling me Darryn Peterson and Bill Self get to play with that underdog chip on their shoulder, great, awesome, right? And obviously sports like are hard to predict. And everybody is entitled to their own opinions, right? At the same time, I do feel like Kansas is right now being penalized and being disrespected and being slept on in large part of what has happened the past couple of seasons, where they're almost being penalized for people being wrong about them. You know, this is something where people have this like bias. This happens too. Like if you bet on like a football team, or you, I don't know, like, and it just goes wrong, or you play fantasy football or fantasy baseball, fantasy basketball, whatever, and you draft someone, they have a bad year. You're more inclined not to take them or bet on them again later because you get this like inherent bias that like, yeah, it didn't go well for me or they're bad for me, even though it might have just been, hey, you happen to correlate when things were bad for them or something like that, right? And so regardless of all the great years of success under Bill Self in Kansas, you have 2 bad years where people pick you preseason number 1 in the AP poll, and all of a sudden it is this indictment of like, well, you know, we're going to hold this against it. And I don't think it's really like a conscious decision for a lot of people. I think it's more subconscious than anything, feeling like you've been let down. Like, I don't think somebody's actively being like, you know what, I think Kansas is actually the 12th best team in the country. But come to think of it, they let me down the last 2 years. I voted them number 1. I'm going to drop them to 22. I don't think somebody's doing that consciously, but like subconsciously, could that be something that is in there? Yes. I don't think this penalty, let's say Kansas finished as the traditional Bill Self top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. I think this team would be pretty consistently a top 12, top 15, maybe even borderline top 10 team in some of the preseason polls this season. And if someone doesn't fully buy into this team because of a lack of shooting, or maybe needing one more like top end talented guy after they missed out on Dame Sarr and Darian Williams, like, I get it. I think those are valid, I guess, criticisms or concerns that you could have about this roster, about this team. And so if you think they're close to being the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th best team in the country, like, I still think they're going to be higher than that. And thank you to everybody who's caught our episodes of why I think they're going to be better, you know, next year than they were the last couple seasons. Again, you can check that out anywhere you get your podcast here. I can understand if somebody would have them in that range. Where I start to lose a little bit of what are you doing here, or I start to get to this point of like, okay, that's maybe going a little bit far, is some of the insanely low numbers. So John Rothstein has Kansas at 32nd in his top 45. I mean, what are we doing here? Kansas, they were 7 seed last year. They're better this year and we have them at 30. You have the most accomplished head coach currently sitting in college basketball, right? I guess maybe you could argue like Rick Pitino, but whatever. You have the arguably best player in the country in Darryn Peterson, 32nd. Joe Lunardi has Kansas as a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. Now, quick aside to this, bracketology in general is the stupidest thing ever at this point in the season. Because at least like a poll, a power ranking, and a preseason poll, it is people guessing how good a team is going to be. Do you understand what bracketology is? Bracketology is not guessing what a team is going to be. Bracketology is evaluating teams' resumes and saying, hey, based on this resume, based on how many quad one wins you have, based on your record, based on your conference standing, based on your net rating, based on your resume, this is what seed I think you are going to get. You're in the tournament. You're out of the tournament. You're a 1 seed. You're a 3 seed. That is bracketology. How do you have bracketology for a bunch of 0-0 teams? You can't. Everybody has the same resume record. So whatever, 100 times dumber than preseason polls. But beyond that, considering Kansas's schedule and the team they have, no, not on the 6th seed. If they get a 6th seed, it's because somebody got injured. Yeah, like somebody very good who got injured. ESPN has them at 21, which is kind of borderline. Like I said, I can understand the kind of 14, 17 range. I guess I could eke out if it was to 20, so that's at 21, but that still feels a little low to me. And why it's all dumb. I mean, first of all, if we want to take a look at a different place, like an objective computer, which doesn't have some of these biases, Bart Torvik has Kansas at 17th, and that's far from a perfect metric. Also, though, keep in mind, Bart Torvik does not have Paul Mbia in there. It does not have Cole Rosario in there. Now, I don't know how much that affects Kansas or how much that would boost their Bart Torvik rating, but their score is less than 0.01 away from being 12th, even without those guys. So again, I think 17 is probably a little low, but I think it's at least you could make that argument or have that fair estimation on the team based on certain things. Regardless, let's start here. Kansas finished 24th in KenPom last season. As we talked about in a recent episode, there's a lot of reasons why this team is better. Darryn Peterson, hey, he might be the best player in the country. Right? There's a difference between having Hunter Dickinson be the best player on your team who, certain nights was the best player on the floor, but other nights, maybe he was the second or third best player on the floor. Darryn Peterson is the best player on the floor. Okay, that's important. Bill Self with All-American lead guards. They're constantly having success. Frank Mason, they go to an Elite Eight when he wins National Player of the Year. Devon Dotson, second team All-American. They're the best team in the country. Devontae Graham, first team All-American. They go to a Final Four. Sharon Collins, back-to-back All-American years. They're Big 12 champions, 3 seed, Sweet 16 one year. They're the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament another year. When he has those All-American leads guards, they do well. They should be a good offensive rebounding team, certainly much better than they were a season ago. They should be better at forcing turnovers and creating steals on the defensive end. They should be a more switchable defensive team, who I know some of the overall defensive ratings ended up okay for last year's team, but they weren't matchup proof. There were certain matchups that caused them issues. They're more matchup proof with this year's team. There's lots of reasons why this year's team should be better than they were a season ago. But beyond that, we get to the important question. Does it matter? Does it matter where Kansas is being picked? And as I said earlier, no, it doesn't really. But I wanted to do a scientific reason why. Take a look at last year's AP poll. This was last year's preseason AP poll for the 2024 to 2025 season. And if we look at the 25 teams that were rated, I'm going to sort them into 3 buckets: hits, misses, and ish, kind of, in a general range. The hits, Alabama was at number 2. They were a 2 seed, and, maybe if they get a better draw with their 1 seed, they make a Final Four. I don't know. That's at least within range. Houston being, 4th on the preseason AP poll. Okay, that's a hit. Arizona was 10th. They finished around there. Tennessee was 12th. They ended up getting, a 2 seed. So, that's pretty close there. A&M was 13th. They were right around there. Purdue was 14th. They end up getting a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. So, that kind of puts you right around that mark. UCLA comes in at 22nd. They finished around there. Ole Miss was a 6 seed. They came in at 24th. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That would be 8 hits. 8 of the 25 were basically hits of like right around where they ended up being. If we go to the ish column, Iowa State was preseason 5th. And maybe if not severe some injuries to some of their guards, they finish around there. I mean, they still ended up with 3 seeds. And maybe we should put that in the hits column. That would give 9 hits. Gonzaga was 6th, where it's like, okay, they were in the 8-9 game in the first round of the NCAA tournaments. That would not be a hit. But if you look at their KenPom rating, that was a hit. They were right around there. They were just a little bit lower than that. So I'll put that in the ish column. Auburn was 11th. Again, you could argue that's a hit because people thought Auburn was a near top 10 team, but nobody thought Auburn was going to be, for a majority of the season, thought of as the best team in the country. So I'm going to keep that in the ish column. Arkansas was 16th. Again, I could go either way. They were 16th. They made the Sweet 16. So it's like, okay, technically, they were okay there. Technically, that was all good. But also, they were in danger of missing the NCAA tournament for a good portion of the season. So that would be kind of another ish. And then we look at the misses. Kansas being number 1 in the preseason, that was a miss. UConn being number 3 in the preseason, that was a miss, obviously. They get on the 8-9 game as well. Honestly, I'm going to call Duke being number 7 a miss. With how much talent they had and how loaded they were, they should have been a preseason top 5 team, if not the preseason number 1 team in the country. And they end up getting 7. So I'm going to actually call that a miss. Baylor at 8 was a miss. That was closer to their NCAA tournament seed, or was their NCAA tournament seed, than how good they were in the country. North Carolina at number 9, nearly missed the NCAA tournament. Creighton at 15, they were a solid team, but they weren't a top 15 team. Indiana at 17, they didn't even make the NCAA tournament. Marquette at 18, they were a 7 seed in the tournament. Texas at 19, barely makes the tournament. Cincinnati at 20, does not make the tournament. Florida at 21, they win the national championship, and they should have been higher than 21. Kentucky at 23, they ended up being a 3 seed and having a really pleasant season. And then Rutgers at 25, did they even make I don't even think they made the Big Ten tournament. So point being, that is 13 misses. And I could argue it down to 12 if you wanted to take away the Duke one. But that's basically half the top 25 that they were wrong about in a big way. So the short answer is it does not matter. The long answer is it does not matter. And the middle answer is that I think Kansas is going to be a lot better next season than they were these past couple of seasons. All right, let's talk a little floor ceiling outcome. What could the season look like for KU based on certain pathways that the season could go? This is Locked On Jayhawks. Today's episode of LOJ is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day, and suddenly you're like, hey, I want to go to a baseball game, right? I want to enjoy a cold one and have a hot dog, or get a helmet with ice cream in it. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on that food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer it gets to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Game Time has last-minute tickets and zone deals for big savings, like 10% off exclusive zone deals for FIFA Club World Cup matchups. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. Don't forget you make Locked On College Football or Locked On College Basketball your second listen every day. Okay, so what are some of the floor versus ceiling outcomes for this team? I think the players that impacted them, like, there is going to be a swing based on how good Darryn Peterson is, and that'll be obviously the biggest one. If Darryn Peterson is the best player in the country, or one of the best players in the country, like definitively, versus if he is a second team all Big 12 performer, that's a pretty big swing in how the season will go for Kansas, specifically since they built this team with a lot of role players to work around what could be a superstar in Darryn Peterson. Then you end up with a bit of an issue there in terms of what you could end up being. But I think the realistic outcome is that, okay, he should be one of the best players in the conference and the country, right? The other swing outcome, I think for the most part would be like, I mean, health is obviously the one that applies for everyone. So that's almost like a given. It's going to be the shooting skills of players like Elmarco Jackson and Melvin Council, and how quickly can Cole Rosario acclimate with the team, and can he provide 3-point shooting? Like, where's the 3-point shooting? Where's that level of play going to be for Kansas? How do the players from smaller schools like Council and Jaden Dawson, how do they, and I guess if you want to count the guys who are playing at OTE with Rosario, Calderon, and Tiller, how do those guys jump up in competition, right? And how do the young big men acclimate with Paul Mbia and Bryson Tiller? I mean, all three of your big men are underclassmen right now for Kansas. Can they handle that without being the most experienced players in the world, right? I think the realistic ceiling, right, because there's always a 100th percentile or a 1th percentile outcome, first percentile outcome, whatever, that exists of like, oh, 5 players got injured, like, or every player was the best version of themselves. And those things don't happen that often. So like the realistic ceiling is that, yeah, Peterson is a first team All-American or National Player of the Year. Floyd Badunga is a first or second team All Big 12 player who's a first team All Big 12 defender. With what he does on the inside. Council and Almarco fit their roles as ball handlers and what they're asked to do. And Council's this great defender, and Jackson is shooting 34-35% from 3. Dawson and Rosario are giving you 3-point shooting, and Bia, though raw, is providing you good things. Those are the realistic ceiling outcomes, and Kansas ends up being a much better team. And I think the realistic ceiling, I mean, if you have potentially the best player in the country, and you have another potential NBA draft pick in Flory, and you have the possibly most decorated coach in college basketball, I'm not going to prevent the ceiling from saying that this team couldn't get a 1 seed. When you look at I'm not going to pick them to get a 1 seed, even though I'm higher than most of the national media, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities when you're talking Kansas. It would be stupid to eliminate yourself before the season and say that's just not possible. I think the realistic floor is that, yeah, Peterson ends up being good, but not a great player, right? Maybe Flory doesn't take a big step from where he was last season. Maybe some of your backup bigs are raw. Maybe you do have too many role players and not enough, another star player. And to me, that ends up being a 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. Maybe a 6 seed. So for me, I'm kind of picking them to be in that 2-3 seed range. I think that's kind of the middle ground of where you're looking at with this team. But like I said, that's kind of where I'm looking at for this team with the floor and outcome. And it does feel like, based on how the last 2 seasons have gone, that the range of possibilities does feel bigger than it was for so many years in the Bill Self era. And maybe part of that is the transfer portal. Maybe part of that is just the core they had the last couple of years. But that's kind of how I'm viewing it for this season. Okay, they're talking about a new college basketball video game coming out, and I used AI to help come up with the college basketball, the 2K, whatever you want to call them, ratings for this Kansas basketball team B. We'll get to those next. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Jayhawks. Again, don't forget to make Locked On College Football or Locked On College Basketball your second listen every day. Don't forget as well, we got the Rock Chalk Roundball Classic going on Thursday. And that'll be happening at Free State High School. You can still get tickets if you're in Lawrence, 23rd Street Brewery. If you're in Kansas City, there's 2 Johnnies that are doing it. One in Olathe, one in, I forget what the other one was. Look it up, rockchalkroundballclassic.com. And then in Topeka, it's the Johnnies over in Topeka on, I think it's on Fairlawn. So you can get tickets for that, or you can just straight up donate. But Rock Chalk Roundball Classic, a lot of former KU players come in town, and it's for an absolutely awesome cause. Also should mention, I'm going to be doing a trivia event with some other people at Johnny's Tavern in West Lawrence. That'll be Sunday, July 26th, I think is the Sunday, or maybe it's the 27th, but it's that Sunday, and it's at 6 o'clock. We're still registering for teams. There's cash prize. It's a cash entry, and I don't take any of the money. It all goes to the cash prize. So it's a fun event that you get to do some trivia. You can have teams up to 6 people and win some prize. We also have free gift cards that we're giving away too. So like there's all sorts of stuff, that apparel. So highly recommend doing that. And I guess reach out. I have that on my Twitter for how to reach out and who to reach out to for that. Okay. So I asked AI to develop a 2K style ratings for this upcoming KU basketball team. If you missed some of the news this week, EA Sports basically announced that they were going to be bringing back the college basketball video game. Not going to be coming back till 2028, which that kind of stinks. Then we heard from 2K that they kind of made a subtle hint that, like, we're going to be getting back into this as well, which is cool because I was always more into like the college hoops, 2K7, 2K8 than I was the EA Sports. I liked both. There were certain things I liked about each, but cool, whatever. So I basically had AI help develop with certain things that I asked it to input and take into account and everything like that. And went through a couple trial runs, and this is what we ended up with, just to get a good idea of what this would look like. And I don't know, I think this is kind of fun to look at. So it had Darryn Peterson as the top rating for KU with an 88. And I know that for some people who just play like NBA 2K, that might sound low because the best players are like in the mid to high 90s. If you ever played the old like college basketball video games, it was like rare to see somebody be rated a 90. It was like the best players in the country are high 80s. Most of the players are going to be in the 70s. It was just different for the college basketball rating. So an 88 for Peterson, really good. It has Flory as an 87. Really thinking high on Flory, what he's going to do this year. Marco Jackson was the third highest player rated in these ratings with an 83. I didn't think he was going to show up as high because the one season of stats that he had out there was not great his first season, but it believes in him. So we'll see if AI is right on that. Melvin Council, Trey White are both given an 80 overall. Then you have Jaden Dawson as a 79. Paul Mbia, it gave a 77. He'd definitely be somebody who would be even more fun to play with in the game just because the wingspan, I mean, he's going to be blocking everything. Anyway, Bryson Tiller was given a 76. Then you have Jamari McDowell, who was also given a 76. So I guess it's high on McDowell there. Cole Rosario, Samis Calderon were given 75s. Noah Shelby was given a 75, and Corbin Allen was given a 73. Now, this is not the be-all, end-all. This is not necessarily how I believe in everything, but I don't think this did a bad job either. There would certainly be tweaks that I would have throughout this of like certain guys that, yeah, that's a few points too high. That's a few points too low. But I don't know. It's fun to at least look at and think about with the precipice of that video game possibly coming out, and things that you don't get it now. To play with Peterson, though, probably have a good opportunity if you're into that sort of thing to play with Darryn Peterson in the NBA version of 2K coming up pretty soon here. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. Again, Rock Chalk Roundball Classic later this week. Please be there. Please support any way you can. And we'll see you next time for another edition of Locked On Jayhawks.